Good evening, everyone. For those of you who've been seeing this face for the last three webinars, the face looks a little bit different, but you're at the right place. Welcome to the Step Up Series Webinar 4. Just give us another minute while we continue to build towards the exact 4 p.m. Hope you're all set. Hope you've got your notepads ready, your pens ready, or in today's tech days, I hope your iPads and laptops are ready, where you're ready to take all the notes that you can take. We're very, very grateful that you're all on time. I think now we've hit 4, so we're all set. Look forward to everyone, joining. I think in another 1 or 2 minutes, we'll have everyone coming in as well. My name is Prashant Sharma. As you already know, this is a part of the InfoEdge webinar series. Welcome to another edition. Thank you so much for spending your early Thursday evening with us. The Step Up webinar series by the Naukri Hiring Suite family, which includes brands like Naukri.com, Restdesk, Employer Branding, iimjobs, Hirist. And my name, of course, is Prashant Sharma, a member of the InfoEdge marketing function. We're super happy to have you join us, right on time. That's something we really appreciate. We sincerely hope that you're staying safe, taking all the precautions during these pandemic times. Our objective through this series is to ensure that we can all learn from the experiences and insights of industry leaders all together and navigate through these times, which are filled with such uncertainty. It is a pleasure to have 3 esteemed panelists from the recruitment world, and I'm sure you already know them. But before I come to them, here are a few things just to keep in mind through the next hour or so. We're starting right at 4 p.m. And we will be ending at 5 p.m. We were lucky to receive so many questions through the registrations that we have a flow and structure in place already. That being said, we'll be doing a few live polls. We will try our best to take as many live questions as possible as well. But of course, it is on the basis of the amount of time that we have. So in any case, if at all you have questions, please ask away in the chat. Please continue to push the questions. We try to take whatever we can. The topic for today is one with great relevance. I think, like I said, times have been uncertain. The focus has been on trying to get as much as possible through these webinars. And one aspect that we've believed and we've received questions in each of our last 3 webinars has been around passive hiring, pipeline management, and the role of talent acquisition during these times. So therefore, today we hope to discuss, largely 3 aspects. One is passive hiring. One is, with respect to the pipeline management. How do you keep your, pipeline warm during these times when you're not actively hiring? And of course, the talent acquisition role. What does it have to offer? How do we, improve it? How do we keep working at it during this slowdown? Or in some cases, the hiring freeze. We are today joined by 3 wonderful panelists, starting off with Mr. Abhishek Dey. Abhishek is the Director and Global Head of Talent Acquisition at BrowserStat. He's a passionate HR professional with more than a decade's experience. I'm pretty sure you've seen him across social media. He's someone who he advocates, for a lot of the things that he stands for, and we're very, very happy to have him here. He's worked across, verticals such as HR, business partnering, talent management. He's led talent acquisition, employer branding, which I know is one of his favorite subjects as well. And of course, the campus hiring strategy as well. Welcome, Abhishek. Next up, we have Poonam Chaudhary. Poonam is someone who I've had the pleasure of knowing over the last 3 years. Been very, very inspired by some of the great work, she's spearheaded at General Electric. She's a talent acquisition leader there. More than a decade's experience of working, across key talent in industries, power, chemicals, food, agri, and IT. We're very, very happy to have you here as well, Poonam. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we've also got Mr. Manoj Kinadat, Head Talent Acquisition at Atlassian. I think we've seen some incredible work, that's been on at Atlassian. They've been hiring at, some wonderful levels. He's someone with close to 2 decades of experience. And most importantly, I think he has experience of building things from ground up. So that's something that I think we can all use, whether you're at a startup, whether you're at an MNC. That's something that would be, the experience would be useful to all of us. So that's a wonderfully diverse panel, and it covers about 4 decades of experience when I merge it. So I hope that doesn't make anyone feel too old. 4 decades is not too bad. So 4 decades worth of experience on one panel. How do I start this introduction, right? So just like last time, and because it worked well, I'm going to try to do it again. We're not going to do long, elongated introductions, and I don't want to do any further as well because I have the habit of butchering introductions as well. So which is why I'm going to go to Poonam first and ask and I'm going to ask you for one positive, that's come your way through the COVID experience. I know that's tough, but because it has been a very tough time for everyone. But let's focus on the positive. So Poonam, one positive aspect, one personally, one positive aspect professionally, and of course one pleasant surprise, something that you didn't expect to come your way, but it has, and that can be personal or professional. Over to you, Poonam.
All right. Thank you, Prashant, for this introduction and organizing this. Since I'm opening up, so I also get the opportunity to say hello to everybody who's taken their time out and joined to listen to us. I hope it's worth your time and it's a good discussion that you take away with. Talking about a personal positive, at the risk of I think sounding cliched, it's a brand new world to what we left in March to where are we now. So professionally, there were a lot of do's and don'ts. A lot of things were discarded, and all of this, if you look at it now from a work from home perspective to virtual joining, everything is working so seamlessly, right? So the VUCA world, which we were hearing in, which was more like a PPT jargon, has come true now. It's real, right? But the good part is that it's come with a solution. I mean, there is, I would say, a newness that it has brought along with it. So my only message to myself and everybody else is the embrace the change. So that's professionally. Personally, I don't know. I mean, I hope I can justify in 2-3 lines. It's been like a lifetime of learning in past 3 months. The lockdown has perhaps made me more aware of my own being, my own responsibilities. It could be to my family or to my parents who stays in a different city, making a living of their own. To us, again, thinking more about the well-being in a collective way, which is your mind and body. And also, I think finding time to do things that really mattered. And for me, it could be as silly or simple as making a cardboard house with my 10-year-old. So go find your own happiness. Okay, so that's there. Surprise, I think we've overcome that stage of from a shock to a surprise. But something very silly, and this surprised my family, so maybe I can quote, my credit card bills have come to closer to zero, okay? Which is a shock for everybody, but the bigger lesson here is that minimalistic living is possible. You can do more with less, and I'm happy with this new discovery.
Fantastic. I think so. Embrace the change, and minimalistic lifestyle is possible. Great. I think thank you so much, Poonam. Abhishek, I'm going to come to you next. With the same 3 aspects.
Sure. So professionally, I think the biggest high has been around being able to honor all the offer outs that we had. Right. I think that was a big question mark, because we entered COVID with about 80 college grads to join us and about 40-45 people laterally. And luckily, we've been able to honor all of them. So I think that is a big plus for me, because for me, talent acquisition is also about ensuring that the talent piece and not just the acquisition piece, right? So that's one. I think personally, I have picked up new skills. I have expanded my horizons from cooking different kinds of Maggi to actually being able to cook up a decentish meal, and that's been a pleasant surprise for my family as well. So yeah, I've got to spend a lot of quality time with family.
Wonderful. Thank you for the honesty again. That I think we've all been in that Maggi cooking skill. I think we've all grown there. Manoj, coming to you, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Sure. Firstly, have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us. I'm going to cheat a bit here with that question, hopefully in a good way. And I'm going to club the first and the second aspect of your question around professional and personal. I think for me, the biggest part of what I've been experiencing on both these journeys is pure gratitude. And the fact that feeling lucky and grateful to what I have and where I am. And both personally and professionally, I know that that has been the highlight for me in the last 3 months. Added to that is empathy, and which I realized that it's coming in not just from me, you can see it from everyone in your team, everyone in your organization. Because everyone has started understanding the complexities and challenges of having to work from home, manage so many priorities that you have in your life. So for me, gratitude and empathy would be the answer to your first two. Um, the last one is kind of in line with a bit of what Abhishek said, but then on a different note. By qualification, I'm a hotelier. So I used to enjoy cooking only over weekends earlier, but now I've realized that you can get the same fun and you can still feel excited when you cook over a weekday as well. And getting time to cook a meal at the end of the day without compromising what you had to achieve, I think it's been a good learning. So yeah, so now I cook during weekdays as well and not just a weekend.
Fantastic. I think
Yeah.
I'm extremely happy to hear that. I'm also a hotelier by qualification initially, so I'm happy that there are more of us, flowing through the industries. Wonderful to hear that. So looks great. I mean, so we've got about 190 plus participants already lined up. So I think it would be a great time to involve them as well. What we'll do now is we're going to move on to the first section of the webinar, which is around passive hiring, and at which point I think we're just about to send out our first poll. The first poll is something that is a pretty simple question, and we just want to understand from each of you, that what is your percentage of new hires from a passive candidate pool. This can be COVID or not. I think the poll must be coming in shortly. What percentage of your new hires are from a curated passive candidate pool? Less than 10%, 10 to 20%, 20 to 50, or more than 50? Let's just wait for the poll to come in, and then we'll get all the audience involved as well. All right, so looks like the poll is still on its way. But yes, I mean, so that's the first section that we're going to be entering, which is around the passive hiring aspect. Whether it's something that we've done previously or within the COVID space, because right now maintaining that passive hiring aspect is something that's a big challenge to us. I'm going to quickly sort of transition into a situation where I'm going to ask the first question to Abhishek. Abhishek, I'd love to understand from you, because I think this is something that you have worked. I'm sorry, Amrita, I know you're asking where is the poll. The poll's coming up shortly. We'll take it after this question while we get over that, because I don't want to waste any time. How do you set up an ideal passive hiring process? It's something that, works from pre-COVID, post-COVID, whatever happens. I think there has to be something that we can say that this is the ideal process in a utopian world. So would be great to hear from you on that.
Sure. So I think one thing that I've realized across all the companies that I worked at is in talent acquisition, there isn't quite like the perfect utopia. So I'll try and articulate what I've seen best, right? In terms of what has worked. So I think passive talent has been like a buzzword for quite a while, right? Across like COVID or otherwise. I firmly believe in it primarily because of two reasons. One, I think if people are doing really well in their organizations and not necessarily looking out, and then you get them in or able to get them excited about an opportunity, they probably are going to add a lot of value to your organization than someone who is always on the lookout for a job, right? So I think that's the basic premise of me liking to go after passive talent. Essentially, I would like to visualize this in 3 steps. One is creating that pool, identifying what that pool is, right? And there are various methods, platforms available through which you can do that. And I have generally used a combination of referrals or people in the industry who are great but may not be looking, obviously LinkedIn, job boards, and so on, to be able to curate that list first, right? Once you've done that, and okay, even before that, I mean, not putting the cart before the horse, really figure out what roles you want to look at passive talent for, right? Because a lot of times you just say that, okay, this is a great person, let's just get them interviewed or let's have exploratory conversations. But that's a little more reactive. I would rather say codifying what critical roles mean in an organization, being able to have a scientific way to arrive at it, then identifying that pool, engaging that pool depending on seniority on a one-to-many basis through mailers, or probably one-to-one basis if they're senior talent, with exploratory conversations with leaders, and then taking them to the hiring funnel whenever a role opens up. So essentially that's how I would look at categorizing it. And then obviously there are a lot of add-ons that you can use in terms of technology, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be very, very manual work. There are a lot of platforms that are available which can integrate with your ATS, with their APIs exposed, etc. And a lot of that can be used to push out talent, push out content to relevant talent. So that is one way to do it.
Just a small follow-up question. Would you say that the content plays a major role, like possibly a larger role than a lot of us assume within the passive hiring phase, the content that we push out?
It really depends. Again, depends on seniority of the person. Like if it's at a director level or a function head level, the person would rather have like an in-person conversation than receiving an emailer. But yes, to a junior, to a mid-level, probably content helps in creating that sort of stickiness, and then you could have that conversation set up. What I've also seen won't work in these post-COVID times, but then are also from an engagement standpoint, how do we do these curated closed door sort of get-togethers, tech talks or talks, if you will, meetups, where you're able to get relevant talent together. There's networking, obviously, and then you subtly throw in the pitch of the company as well.
You've spoken like a pro there in terms of pitching the company into it. So I'm also going to quickly do a small pitch and say that, within the Naukri hiring suite as well, that there are, of course, options to integrate with the ATS and everything, much like a lot of the platforms that are there. I think now we can quickly go to the poll, and now that we have some context around it after the first question as well, we can see if the poll goes live, and we can actually hear the attendees, which is okay. So the poll's right there. We've got close to 207 participants now. So let's go. I think what percentage of your new hires are from a curated passive candidate pool? Less than 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, or more than 50, right? I think, do the panelists have the right to vote?
I just voted, so I guess.
Right, you also voted, right?
Yes, even I did.
Nice. I think in another 5 seconds, we can close the poll, because I hope everyone's got the opportunity to vote. And then we'll move on. And I'm very interested to see this because, yes, let's see what the results are. Right. So 10 to 20%. That's quite a number. And honestly, I think it seems like we're still under 20. So about 80% are less than 20%. So maybe that's something that needs to be worked on from a lot of our standpoints as well. So, moving on from that, I'd like to quickly understand from Poonam now. The cycle of appraisals is something that, plays a big role within the passive hiring phases. We've got another cycle coming up as well. And, the first cycle may have been postponed for a lot of organizations, due to the COVID crisis. How does one ensure that, the appraisals being around the corner do not increase the time to hire for passive candidates? Because that is a realistic challenge that can come across.
Right. I would, answer this, irrespective of COVID or not, because appraisals always existed. And then it has cycles as well. I mean, most of the companies in India may have a March to April or a June and July, right? And if you map that to the hiring calendar that all of us have, the peak is always in Q2 and Q3. Q1 goes in planning and Q4 is mostly in closing. So it's always collided. And I think there is a mechanism around the system which anticipates this and covers it up quite well. Again, from personal experience of the companies that I've been part of, erstwhile as well as now, our compensation structures are quite compelling, I would say, when it comes to top talent. Of course, you can't be doing it for everybody, but for people who really matter and you think it's a long-term hire, these are baked in, when you make, for example, there could be any imminent loss. It could be merit cycle coming up. It could be a loss of, variable pay. It could be some ESOPs, retentions, etc. So I really don't think it's going to come in particularly as a challenge for this year. And if we stick to the context, perhaps this year is a little different because, as you've rightfully mentioned, most of the organizations that we know of have deferred it. I mean, it could be end of the year or Q1 of next year, and few of them indefinitely. I think the bigger challenge for us, and of course, Abhishek and Manoj can also chime in right now, is the stickiness, which Abhishek was mentioning, right? Especially when we talk about passive candidates. There is a skepticism which is there amongst people to unsettle themselves. I mean, when there is so much going on, there's so much of uncertainty. So, moving on to a different company, different job may not be very pleasant for everyone. So that's where I think our chase is. And this is not restricted to only passive candidates. We are also running the risk of maybe losing out of the people whom we had offered, but who are yet to join, So how do you mitigate this? I mean, maybe there's a 50% art and 50% science in the formula. The art here is that the recruiter really needs to get into that core engagement mode where he's resilient, consistently following up, pursuing, and leading to meaningful conversations and catching on to those pulses, the red flags rather, and you work on it. And if you have a visibility on your open roles, which is to come up, and it's not a very long leash, I would suggest, build on your pipeline very, very carefully, and do not just depend on one shortlist for the final rounds. Have backups. It is a TA mantra anyway, but right now I think it's more important because, again, personally, I have seen people who are reluctant to resign, or the companies have held them back, right? And they're in dual minds. The people are emotional. They don't know whether they should leave their company now. So everything plays together while we need to do our job. I think, yes, persistence and make use of all the tools and technologies that we have. Like, we have a fantastic CRM tool, which exactly helps you to pick up from where you left the candidate. We have Phenom. So I'm sure that there are lots others. So pick up both, the tools and technologies as well as the Recruiter Connects.
Great. I think some very valid points there, and especially, the aspect around the TM mantra that becomes more important right now than any other times. So I think great. Thank you so much for that. Manoj, I'm going to come to you next. And my question is very, very simply around employer branding. Employer branding can a lot of times vary in terms of your budgets and how you do it. And, for small organizations, large organizations, I think one very basic question that I'd like to ask, simply because, employer branding is sometimes key for hiring passive talent, is what are some strategies that are lesser known employer brand employers to hire passive talent? Now, you can assume certain budget restrictions here, but if you have some, with budget options as well, please do share that as well.
Sure. Maybe that question resonates clearly well if I were to look at the last 2-year journey that I've had with Atlassian, right? When we started our journey in 2018, we still talk about it within the company. There was a stage when the recruiters at Atlassian used to reach out to potential talent, and we used to say, we're calling from Atlassian, and we used to get this question, Atlassian who, right? And so we started this. It's a very relevant question. But some of the things that I'm going to share, it doesn't mean that it's applicable only for lesser known brands, but then maybe slightly more for a lesser known brand as against a very well known brand. Because the candidate expectation has changed, right? If you really look at how the market has evolved, just by saying that I'm so and so, I don't think you're going to get talent anymore, right? So everyone needs to be thoughtful about how are you pitching and how are you positioning your brand. So for me, there are multiple aspects of what you need to think about when you look at talent brand in general. I think the first and foremost, I think Abhishek touched upon that when he was talking about passive talent, is being able to clearly articulate who your target audience is. So for any talent brand to be successful, what you need to first understand is whom do you want to target your brand for, right? Who are your potential target audience? We spoke about stickiness as well, I guess. So all of that is based on getting that targeting right. Once you have the targeting right, in parallel, what you need to also start working on, and this is known by different names in the industry. Some call it EVP, which might be the most commonly known term, the employee value proposition, in terms of why should someone join you, right? If you don't have it, it is important for you to build one. Alongside to EVP, I also talk about having a clear story of EVP could be larger, broader organization wide, but then if you're hiring for a particular team, there has to be a scaled down version of an EVP for that team. So there has to be clear investment of time, which has to go into building that part of having an EVP. Do you have a strong story? So you have your target audience, then you have your strong story that you would like to talk about or curate. Third is a part of the research, which is all about where do you typically find your target audience to spend time on, right? Now, I still believe that India as a market is still evolving to the digital side of it. We are not, there are still a lot of people who consume content on a print or a should be sure a practical conservative medium of opening up a newspaper, seeing an ad, to seeing a huge hoarding when you drive to the airport or on the outer ring roads or any tech parks and so on and so forth. So being able to identify where exactly does your target audience spend a lot of time? How do they consume content? What is the best way to reach out to them? So you have your target audience in place. You have the content that you would like to take to them. Then you have the medium where you would like to get that content out. And then it's all about making sure that you stay on top of it, right? Because unless you don't get these basics right, there is no point in you having money or not having money. It doesn't matter, right? I'm sure we would have all seen organizations who spend a lot of money and come up with those maybe a great looking ads or a print out there, but then you might walk away feeling not connected. That you lose that connection. You don't get hooked up. We spoke about getting hooked, right? We don't get hooked to that. So just being thoughtful. Sometimes it's just about using your employees as your best means of reaching out to your passive talent, right? And that's zero cost, potentially, if you really look at it, right? Use your employees, ensure that they're active on Medium, identify rock stars in your organization who can take that messaging out and help you get that message out to multiple people. So that's the way I look at it, Prashant. So to summarize, if you were to ask me, any brand, irrespective of well-known or a lesser known, unless you don't have a clear understanding of your target audience, unless you don't have a strong EVP or a story to tell, if you don't know where they hang out and how to reach them, and if you don't have an effective communication strategy to reach them, none of the talent brand or the attraction or reaching out to passive talent is going to be effective. It's not going to give you results. So that's what I've learned through my experience of running some of these over the last few years.
Thank you so much. I think as a marketing student, I think that wasn't just for employer branding. I think a lot of it works for branding in general. So thank you so much, Manoj, for sharing that. I think that must have answered a lot of the questions that come with where's the budget, what should we do, That broken up process, I think, is something that is customizable for everyone. So I hope that answered that. Thank you so much, Manoj. What we'll do now quickly is that we'll actually move on to the next section. And the next section is something that, it functions on an aspect that is very, very important right now, which is pipeline management. Before we get to that, there's a poll that will that will go up right now. And it is just something that we want to understand from this set of people. What has been the impact of COVID-19 on your hiring activity? And there are enough options there. I'm sure you lie in one of them. So please do, vote ASAP. And the point of us understanding this is very, very simply put, to get where you are and how relevant is our content right now within this webinar for you. If it's, for example, decreased by 50%, then I think pipeline management, staying relevant are very, very important pointers. And that's what's to follow next, of course. Right. So what has been the impact of COVID-19 on your hiring activity? I think in another 5 seconds, we can get this done. Yes. So, all right. So it has decreased by more than 50%. I think that is something that also resonates with the overall industry outlook as well. And a lot of data will, of course, showcase that. Thank you so much, everyone, for voting. So lovely to see that there's no attrition. There's actually an increase. So there's about 210 people now. Lovely. Stay tuned in. I love the fact that you guys are sending questions. I'll have to take them in a bit, of course. Don't worry. Yes. So I think largely next section, and my question comes to Poonam next, is and I'm coming to you because you also said a few things about this, in your first answer. Within pipeline management, I mean, how do you keep your talent pipeline warm amidst the current hiring freeze? And in fact, if you're not in a hiring freeze, I'm sure it's slowed down. So what does one do to keep the talent pipeline warm?
Um, you know, I personally feel this is the toughest in the whole candidate journey, which actually starts from an Excel sheet or a tracker to, breaking it down to the first exploratory call and then remaining consistent with your communication. It takes a lot. Okay. And this is the phase again where we actually lose out on few potential people for whatever reason, may not have been consistent enough. The conversation has not been meaningful enough, or the role's really taking too long. I mean, you cannot keep them warm beyond maybe a certain phase. Uh, when I think about it, I think there are three ways in terms of how we do it, and it's engage and engage. So there is no alternative to this. Okay, you can do it differently through different phases or maybe through different mediums, but engagement is the core here. So you need to really be creative, I would say, and consciously plan this out, which may look random to them, but it's not to you. It's a very calendarized effort, I would say, and there is a pitch which has gone in, and a complete structure to this. So in this whole journey, the recruiter plays the number one role. He or she is always emotionally connected to the person. So it's your job, it's my job, to really be in touch with that person. Um, and if I were to talk about a little bit on the content of this calls, once you have really explored it and the candidate is in your side and is engaged, the rest of the calls at times could be very generic. It could be right from checking on their well-being, like in today's time, are you really going back and saying a hello to figure out it, and it matters to them, right? It could also be about asking referrals from them. I mean, they may or may not have, let's not question that, but they feeling of the feeling of being part of another ecosystem where they've not even entered. So it gives them a little bit of engagement. Um, and, and there are a lot of other aspects where you can be very proactive. So I'll talk about my current company because last year we'd been in news quite often. I mean, more than what we were maybe in the last few years, because there were too many things happening at the HQ level. And few of them were not so good. There's a lot of negative press around. So what we did very consciously, we structured, who are the people that we need to reach out to before they start forming opinions. Let's go out candidly, address them, ask them, what they have been hearing, and then share our side of the journey in terms of what these are, or how are we emerging out of it, right? Maybe it doesn't really change much in terms of their mind space, but at least you've made an effort and people have appreciated that, right? So keep those engagements on. Recruiter is the key. You cannot drop the ball. Otherwise, I would have always felt engage your HR as well as your people leader. You'll take your call in terms of, Abhishek was also mentioning, in your whole pool, if you have 1,000 people, there'll be whatever brackets of top 20 to and other tiers. It's a serious business, to manage passive candidates. And the sooner you engage the leadership, you are in a better position, because they also realize that it's a considerable investment of time from all ends, right? And again, all of us will vouch to the fact that when a leader speaks, a business leader speaks to anybody who's a potential hire for you, the conversation changes, the impact changes. They realize that this is for real. And it works both ways. Even the business whom we have been showing these Excels, they know there are faces behind those names, right? And the people at the other end at the same time appreciate, what's going on. So I think this whole engagement process with your own leaders is very, very important. Do not discount them. While you might try as much as you can with the human angle of trying and calling up and mailing, etc., let's not leave technology behind, because that's the other partner which is emerging, I think, fairly fast, and few of them are very, very smart, right? I mean, I've just referred to the CRM tool that we use, and there are multiple of them. So all of this enables the recruiter to have these conversations in a very structured way. There could be mailers, customized, mass mailers, letting them know about what's going on in your company or newsletters, etc. But the idea here is to go back and tell them that, hey, we are there, right? And these are quite nice stuff, which gets the templatized versions of these. The CRM tools are also pretty nice. So I think it has to be both, and if you were to really transform this and make it real tomorrow, you have to have all of this. It's always a blend of relationship and digital efforts.
Great. I think that again brings us to a very structured approach that we can check out. I think that's something that is applicable for a lot of people. But just to sort of add a question here, and I'm going to put it to Abhishek right now. Abhishek, like she said, the involvement of the leadership. Now, of course, I think some organizations may have those leaders where they're very, very involved. They'd love to send out a message. They'd love to send out or even a small video recording saying that, don't worry, everything is on, it's fine. If you could quickly sum up, how do we get around, sometimes when business leaders aren't able to invest enough time into that pipeline aspect as well? I know this is an ad hoc question, but I just thought it'd be interesting to see.
Sure. So I think the big piece that I believe in big time is that recruitment is not just the recruiter's responsibility, right? It's a joint responsibility. So whenever my team or we work on passive talent engagement, etc., it's an upfront commitment that we typically take from the leadership, saying that these are the number of hours that you typically allocate for doing this. If they're still not able to do it, then we would probably figure out options of mailers or options of maybe like a webcast that we might have recorded to be shared with the candidates. But yeah, I mean, we would upfront take that buy-in, because I think it's about ROI, right? You're also talking about what if your hypothetically your COO decides to leave tomorrow and you don't have a pipeline of passive candidates, neither do you have an internal succession slate. What is the impact then? Where are you going to spend more time? Like a person being having an exploratory chat with you a week, or would you rather do those interviews upfront? So
great. I think that I think being upfront is something that is quite. I think it sets the pace for the overall life cycle conversation as well. I think that's great. Thank you so much, Abhishek. I'm going to quickly move to the next question, which is, and I'm going to post it to Manoj first. Now half the year is behind us. We're about to enter the 7th month. The metrics and everything around pipeline management may have taken a toss this year, but it's possibly more important now than ever, especially if there's a hiring freeze or slowdown at the organization. How would you measure the success? How would you measure the success of any talent acquisition team with regards to the upcoming 6 months now?
It's a tough one, because I think many organizations are at different
So you have 2 decades. So we've given you the toughest question.
I don't think, luckily, I had a COVID to deal with in the last 2 decades. So I think that seems to be the differentiating factor. But I'm going to try and do justice to that question. Let me be extremely honest about it. So I'm assuming your question is anything outside of the numbers and the metrics and the hiring that you have to do, because that hasn't changed. Whether it could have stayed consistent, it would have gone down, or in some instances, it might have gone up as well, right? So if I exclude that part of how to measure success, and mainly in the last 2 to 3 months, if I were to look at it from my team's point of view, or the teams that I've been part of in the past, I think the bigger question which gets asked to all of us is productivity, in terms of when you are in the thick and thin of hiring, when you have given enough and more numbers to hire, no one asks you anything beyond how many hires have you made. That's your definition of productivity. I think the definition of productivity changes when you don't have enough to hire, right? So I look at it from that point of view, in terms of as a leader, as an individual, when you had time, what kind of impact have you created to the organization? And can we convert that into something which is quantifiable, right? For me, I think a classic example of where I would look at success measures could be how many individuals took ownership of upskilling themselves. I think we did, I'm not sure whether Poonam or Abhishek, one of you spoke about, does all our recruiters know how to deal with complex and difficult conversations sometimes, right? So ensuring that individuals are given the opportunity to upskill themselves, and that could be a metric that we can cover. How many of them took what kind of initiative, right, to use alternate in terms of the time that you're investing on. Going back to the basics, right? Can we make sure that we've gone back and looked at our processes, systems, data, hygiene practices, and so on and so forth? Maybe when you don't have too much of hiring to do, that's when you can extremely focus high on experience. Have you been able to move the needle when it comes to candidate experience? Have you been able to move the needle when it comes to hiring manager experience? And are you bringing that into play? Third, I think the topic of this entire webinar is around the passive talent. Now, to me, this is a temporary phase, and I hope all of us are seeing it through that. There is a 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, 6 months down the line where things are going to start getting back to normal. So have you started thinking of passive talent? Have you started having meaningful conversations with your business leaders in terms of when we potentially go back to normal, what kind of roles are you going to hire for? Can we have a passive hiring strategy for some of those? Whom do we need to engage with? So have you been able to build a passive talent pool for your future hires? Could be a good way of measure. So to me, some of these might sound like tall statements to me, because I know this is something that we keep hearing. But then if you really go down to the ground basic, I think this is where you can really hold your team accountable to. And you can say that next 3 months, considering we are going to be spending a lot of time without hiring or outside of interviewing, success to me and success to this team looks like if you're able to achieve these milestones. Have you reviewed the processes? Have you been able to build some new policies? Relook at your experiences, upskill your, how many trainings have you done? How many courses did you take? And so on and so forth. So can get a bit subjective, but I believe that those are still a good indicators of, did the team stay productive and did they feel engaged with the organization and the team? So that's the best, Prashant, I feel we could try and think of, which could define success of a team end of the day.
Absolutely. I think some very fair points there. Of course, certain points are about the basics and doing the basics right, but I think a lot of times we do forget to do those well, of course. Abhishek, do you have something to add as well?
Yeah, so Manoj, as usual, has covered most. But I think just to re-emphasize, right, coming back to the point around branding and ensuring that your passive talent is engaged through branding, etc. I mean, all of that for me is bells and whistles. Still, the actual recruiting process is not robust, because that's how they experience your organization, right? You may say that you're a great place to work. You say that you value your candidates, etc. But all of that is just English till they actually experience what it's on the ground, right? When they actually go to the interview process. How are hiring managers interacting with candidates? I think this is a great time to set also baselines with hiring managers around what sort of hiring bar should we have. Train new interviewers, right? If the next hiring wave is going to be huge, do you have capacity to manage that in terms of a crunch timeline? I mean, we may create all the pipeline that we can, but if the bottleneck is the interview pool, then you're stuck till your interview pool is calibrated, right? So that's super important for me as well. And I think the other piece is around being creative about how you're going to really show value, right? Manoj talked about the passive talent piece. An extension of that could be market mapping, right? And that has a lot of value, right? Once you're able to show leaders that, hey, these are the companies which are very similar to us, and these are the top leaders there. Would you want to engage with any of them for an opportunistic hiring requirement? That can be a great way to show value. Potential companies that are going underwater, which may have great talent, are you able to tap into that? And maybe even look at acqui-hires. This is a great time for acqui-hires if recruiting leaders can put their mind to it, and if obviously business leaders sponsor that. But yeah, so there are multiple ways to add value. A lot of it will be subjective. Some of these that I'm talking about can have very, very objective metrics to it. Also, in terms of when the hiring opens up, for example, if you're hiring for revenue related roles, right, sales roles, if a typical time to fill for a backfill is say 30 days, that's 30 days of revenue lost. Whereas if you have a passive talent pool identified, engaged, and you're probably already done 2 rounds, you can quickly crunch that down to 15 days, which means your revenue loss is cut down by half, right, in terms of revenue leakage or someone not being able to service those customers. So there could be dollar values apportioned to actual activities that a talent acquisition person can do, even during a slowdown or a freeze.
Fantastic. I think the one aspect that did sort of stand out for me was around the mapping the industry and staying up to date with what's happening at your competitors. How are they doing? Is there an opportunity to hire from there? I think great. I think so. You managed to add to everything that Manoj said.
Whatever little I could.
Thank you so much for that as well. We're going to quickly move on to the next poll. The next poll is actually something that stems from what we were discussing, and of course, I mean, it may not be about a course, but have you worked on yourself? And we're asking this because the next aspect is around the TA role, and it'll be just one question which will be to all three panelists as well. So in this slowdown, have you personally enrolled yourself in any professional course? We still got close to 200 attendees, so let's see if you guys are working on yourself side by side. Yes, I think so. Because it's just two options, I think we can take the poll down now. Simple enough to vote. Yes. Okay, so 66% have said that that they're working on them. So that's good to hear. Hope you do multiple courses as well. But to the 34% who haven't yet, and to all the others who aren't here right now, but who will check out this recording later. One very simple question that I have, and I will follow that up with just two best practices each, which will be the conclusion to this. But if you were someone with 3 years or 4 years of work experience at this stage, and this crisis would have come up, and this goes to each of you. I'll start with Poonam first. Poonam, what would you say is the best way for billable resources like talent acquisition professionals to contribute, to organizational and personal success when hiring is actually not happening? How does that person, and you can take this as an individual as well, like how does an individual work on his or herself to do better?
Okay, so the whole, I think I'll first talk about the billable, non-billable element that you've spoken about, and I think this factors from this whole cash flow mechanism that an organization has, right? I mean, yes, we don't bring revenue to the system, but I think my contribution or the team's contribution is as much, right? So firstly, I think feel good about the fact that you are part of a growth story in an organization. An organization is as good as a talent looks like, and we are the ones who first-handedly builds this, right? So hence
there's about 196 claps coming your way from all the attendees.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've always been subject to this discrimination, saying, hey, you're a cost center. But to some extent, this is where our scope lies in. We do things which are very transactional, and which is how our job entails. But for times like this, which we had completely not seen, and Manoj had very nicely covered, and so had Abhishek, when you actually look back, what are the things that you could have done, now that you have time in hand? And these could be something you don't really need to go out, okay? And to answer your question in the poll also, I'd said I'm not really enrolled in any course. So I am just doing an internalization, and similar can happen for your function. Just think through what is that you could have done. And there are multiple of them. There could be enhancement in processes. You apply lean. Everybody talks in the business about lean. It's not just Six Sigma. I mean, make it smoother, make it finer, remove all the frills, right? Make it easy for people. Your candidate experience needs, I would say, experience much beyond that any of us can talk about, right? Engage with your HR. I mean, this is also the time to show solidarity with the entire organization. I mean, they're doing a lot, right, from process revision to, I would say, reorganization, etc. If it's not in your scope, step out, be with them, do that, right? So do your core well. That's what I am doing. Relook at what can be scaled, and invest in your own team, because they're going through all different emotional turmoils, right? So you need to understand each other, talk to each other, and of course upscale each other. So exactly, this is what we're doing. And just to add in, again, Abhishek had done the market intel piece. TA, we keep telling ourselves as talent advisors, but at the end of the day, we just do postman jobs for many a times. So get your basics right, try and see what your competitor is doing or how the industry is moving, and translate all that knowledge back to your partners here, right? I will take an example. So we had started with something called a newsletter, which is completely nothing to do with recruitment. It is about the power industry. In the budget, what was the allocation, what is coming up in next 5 years, etc. And I thought, let's have this within the team so that we are more well equipped. It slowly moved on to HR. They were happy to hear about it. HR forwarded it to the leaders. Not that they didn't know about it, right? But they were so happy that the kind of interest that somebody from a talent acquisition team took to understand their bit of the world and cascading it to them in terms of capsules, right? So I think there are a lot many things that you can do.
Perfect. I think so. I think, would you want to club in another best practice right now? Because I think what we'll do now is we'll take this question and each of the panelists can actually share their best practices as well, side by side. Just 2 best practices each. If this was already done for you, then it's fine.
Okay. So best practice for me, I'll keep it short because I know we're running against time. For TA, get a place in the people review team. Okay, this is where talent is discussed, succession planning is done, attrition is being talked about. You need to know what is that you're going to build, right? Your passive candidate, the skills. So that's one, get that as much as you can. And second, I've been influenced quite a lot by the consultants, people from all these tier 1 consultant organizations. They don't have an agenda or a job in mind when they talk to me. They'll just consistently pursue you, right? And that works so well. I mean, the recall value is so high. So work in the corporate with like a consultant mindset.
Perfect. I think that's something that is applicable as well. Abhishek, coming to you next. Again, a quick, idea about what an individual could do to stay, at his peak, at his or her peak during this time. Follow that with just 2 best practices overall for passive hiring.
Sure. So I would say, what an opportunity, right? This is probably something that no one is templatized for. This is where, as HR professionals, we get to create frameworks that have never been created before, or adapt frameworks to this situation, which is like a never seen before crisis, at least in our working lives, right? So I would urge everyone, and that's what I do with my team as well, to see this as a huge opportunity to become the best recruiter that you can, uh, to refine your pitch to the best possible way. Can you tell your story better? Can you refine your elevator pitch better? Right? Do you know the business enough? To Poonam's point, do you know the industry enough? But then more so, do you know the business enough? How can you become the best version of the recruiter that you can? I think that's the challenge that I have for my team, and essentially 2 best practices, right? So one is around trying to apportion metrics to a lot of things which seem like transactional activities or non-value add activities, but we are trying to see how we can apportion metrics to that. So I briefly touched upon the sales example, but we had done this at LinkedIn as well, and Manoj was with me with that journey. But we are trying to do that here in my current organization as well, in terms of saying that how do we ensure that we get the best possible talent so the ramp times are lesser, and hence they become productive quicker, they get revenue for the company quicker. Similarly, if there's a backfill to be done, how do we crunch that time period? There is a headcount plan in place for sales hiring, and how do we ensure that we are able to hit that before time, so that by the time it is actually supposed to be in place, the person is almost half productive, rather than zero revenues, he gets in something, right? And in a time like this, that is highly appreciated by the business. And the second is to like, to Poonam's point, just elaborating that further, partner with the HR business partners on the succession planning front, because in our context currently we are a fairly small company, 650 people globally. So every critical role does not necessarily have a very strong internal succession slate. So then how do we look at building external succession slates? How do we figure in terms of what the industry says about them? How do we give a score to them in terms of relevance to our sort of context? And then engage with them and see where that goes.
Fantastic. I think, again, that covers a lot of aspects that I'm sure are applicable at our own organizations as well. Manoj, I'm going to give it to you next. One aspect that an individual could do to stay focused, stay relevant, and best practices, of course.
Sure. So I think going last sometimes does have its own benefits or disadvantages, right? I don't have anything more to add than what Poonam and Abhishek shared, and I think I agree to all of that. So I'm going to manipulate that question a bit and then give you perspective of what not just the leaders, everyone should start thinking during these times is investing in yourself more from an emotional and a mental perspective. Because from an organizational point of view, what is going to be important for you is that these times will pass and these individuals need to stay healthy, stay motivated, stay engaged for you to tackle what's coming after the situation gets over. So my ask of all leaders would be to build a culture where you're allowing your team members to express uh, what they are feeling. Let them explore things that they may not have been able to do on a very personal front. Allow them time if they need time off so that they're just able to gather themselves. It's not easy. It's difficult times that everyone is going through. So for me, that's my ask of leaders and even individuals. No, you don't need to be a leader to build that culture. Ask is encourage individuals to take time off, encourage individuals to invest in themselves to make themselves better at what they do, a better, stronger human being, which I think is going to be important. So that's my answer to the first question. As I said, not necessarily what you asked for. In terms of best practices, again, I have a very open recommendation. Anything that you do to put experience above a process, I think is a best practice. Any organization who's able to look at a functional delivery through the lens of experience and then build processes keeping that experience is a best practice according to me. More and more organizations realize that earlier we used to come from a place that you build strong processes, it'll give you great experience. But I think we have realized over a period of time that it's pretty much the reverse. Experience comes first, build your processes to make that experience come true. So Atlassian does a bunch of them, but I don't want to say that we are industry leaders and I don't want to say that's the best way to do it, but we are also learning. So my takeaway or my advice to everyone is start thinking of experiences, put that first, and then look at building things around it. And if you have any best practices, feel free to share with us. I'm sure all of us are hungry to learn and try and see how we can build something out of it. So yeah, so that would be my
fantastic. I think I think we've somehow managed to get individual aspects from each of you, even though one followed the other, but somehow you've kept it individualistic and different for each of us. That sort of brings to a closure the overall aspect that you want to touch. I can see some questions coming in as well. I think one question is around, and it is to Abhishek, which is around if you have a pipeline of junior to mid-senior candidates in these unprecedented, what is the best way to nurture that, what is the strategy there? I think Abhishek has answered that with a lot of those aspects as well. As a talent acquisition professional, where should we focus now that hiring is frozen? Again, I think we've touched upon that as well. We've been able to, what are the best courses to cover for talent acquisition? Again, I think those individual questions are not something that you will need a lot of help answering from us. I think you could just do a similar search and you'll be able to find out. Varun, I just want to clarify Varun's question where he says, are we saying indirectly that candidate who is actively seeking a job change may not contribute at the level of a passive candidate? No, I'm quite certain we're not saying that. It's just that our topic this time was entirely around the passive hiring aspect. And I think the panelists would also agree that that was not the objective of saying that. I think a major chunk of everyone's hiring portfolio does come from active candidates, and we're very grateful to everyone that looks for jobs anyway. Right? I think with that, we are in that zone where we can say our thank yous. Anyone, and just to bring this all to a closure, we've discussed passive hiring, we've discussed employer branding, we've had wonderful experiences shared, we've had some best practices, and around analytics, metrics, a lot of these things. I think there's a lot of data out there that we can use as well on our own. We managed to maintain most of our crowd, which is great for us, and it's a big thumbs up for me also. So thank you to all the attendees for staying through the entire hour. I think while you're on your way out, please do remember to have a quick feedback form, that you can sign, so that in a fortnight, once we're back, we can also be better. I have a huge thanks to communicate to all three panelists. Thank you so much for spending this 1 hour with us. I think not one attendee would say that they haven't had some very, very interesting insights from this. Luckily, I think even if it doesn't fulfill the customized purpose that each of you came to this webinar with, I'm sure there's enough that you can take back to the drawing board, customize and try to use. Budgets, no budgets, teams, no teams, anything. I think all our leaders have brought their all their insights and experiences to the fore across the time. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists once again. I hope through this phase that all of you are taking your necessary precautions and are surrounded by loved ones during these pandemic times. Hope, I mean, we're all looking for the improvement of the situation, but until then, please do continue to tune in to our webinar so that we all can continue to learn from each other. In case there's anything else, please feel free to write to us. This has been a great pleasure to organize. Thank you, everyone, all the panelists and the audiences.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.